video, we're going to be talking about the next subsection of the rules, specifically the lawyer's duty to the public in the legal system. So this portion of the rules makes up 2 to 4% of your total MPRE examination. So the first rule that I want to point out is voluntary pro bono service. So the rule tells us that every lawyer has a professional responsibility to provide legal services to those that are unable to pay. A lawyer should aspire to render at least 50 hours of pro bono legal services each year. So I just want to remind all of you about the plain language of this rule here. Remember, this is voluntary. This is aspirational. The rules are encouraging you and every other lawyer to offer pro bono services, and more specifically, the goal of 50 hours per year. So this is a good time to remind you that every jurisdiction has slightly different rules, and the MPRE examination is testing the ABA model rules. And remember, under the ABA model rules, pro bono services are aspirational. So they're not a requirement. So if you don't hit these 50 hours, you are not subject to discipline. The next rule I want to point out is about serving in a legal services organization. So first, let's look at the plain language of the rule, and then we have some examples that we can go over. So it says that a lawyer may serve as a director, an officer, or a member of a legal services organization, apart from the law firm in which the lawyer practices, notwithstanding the organization serves persons having interests adverse to a client of the lawyer. However, the lawyer shall not knowingly participate in a decision or an action of the organization if participation in this decision or action would be incompatible with the lawyer's obligations to a client under the current client conflict rules or present client conflict rules. So I'm just going to stop there. What this is saying is that you might work at a big high-powered firm during the day, and maybe by night you're serving in some sort of legal services organization because you want to, and you feel like maybe it's your duty to participate in something like that. And maybe that law firm you work for by day has clients whose interests are adverse to the legal service organization's interests. And that's okay. The plain language of this rule says that is all right. Now, there is some limitation, however, on what you can do as a lawyer in this situation. And the first limitation specifically says that you should not participate in a decision or take some sort of action if doing so would be incompatible with your obligations to the clients of your day job or to your law firm, because doing so would likely create some sort of present client conflict. And I think this makes sense. While you should be able to use your time however you see fit by participating in, say, a legal services organization, you shouldn't simultaneously be hurting the clients of your law firm. The rule goes on to say that the lawyer shall not knowingly participate in a decision or an action of the organization where that decision or action could have a material adverse effect on the representation of a client of the organization whose interests are adverse to a client of the lawyer. So I like to think that this prong of the rule is kind of evening out the sides here. It's basically saying that this cuts both ways. You can't make a decision that would harm the clients of your law firm, your day job, but you similarly shouldn't participate in making a decision or taking some sort of action that is going to also harm that legal services organization or the clients of that legal services organization. So let's just point out that example that's in your outline because I think it's a great one. It says if an organization wants to pass a zoning law that would be incompatible with the wishes of a lawyer's client, the lawyer shouldn't participate. Or if the lawyer's participation in a vote would actually have an adverse effect on the organization, but could be beneficial to maybe the lawyer's personal clients, the lawyer should refrain from participating in that matter. The next portion of the rule talks about law reform activities that affect your client's interests. So the rule says that a lawyer may serve as a director, an officer, or a member of an organization that's involved in reform of the law or its administration, notwithstanding the reform may negatively or positively affect the interests of a client of the lawyer. So let's stop there. I think it's helpful to remind you that about 99% of our law reform is not retroactive, but instead is just going to make changes to the future of law and its application. And I think if you keep that in mind, this rule makes a little bit more sense. So let me give you a quick example. Let's say you're a criminal defense lawyer, and let's say the bread and butter of your practice is drunk driving cases. So you represent people who get caught driving over the legal limit. And let's say you simultaneously are, active in some sort of law reform group that is seeking stricter laws with respect to drunk driving. At a quick glance, you might feel like, wow, that feels incompatible. This feels like a conflict of interest. How are you trying to represent people who are breaking these drunk driving laws, but simultaneously, wanting stricter drunk driving laws? This just doesn't seem right. But hear me out. That's because if that jurisdiction chose to have a stricter drunk driving law, it's going to take effect and impact those people that come in the future. It's not going to impact your current clients. And therefore, there isn't a conflict there. So keep that in mind. The rule goes on to say that when the lawyer knows that the interest of a client may be materially benefited by a decision in which the lawyer is participating, the lawyer shall disclose that fact, but doesn't have to identify the client. So what this is saying is if you are participating in some sort of law reform group, maybe you are an officer or just a member of it, and there's some sort of action in front of that group, you're allowed to participate in the making of that decision, even if one of your personal clients will be benefited. But what you're supposed to do is disclose to the group that you do have clients or a client that would be materially benefited from this decision, but you don't have to disclose your client's name. I just think of this that the policy behind it is we want you to be, transparent in your participation in these types of activities. Because if you're just participating to benefit your personal clients, that's not great. But if that's what you're doing, fine, as long as you tell everyone that you do in fact have clients that would be benefited. So again, you don't have to say who those clients are. You're just disclosing that there is some sort of benefit to them. And then the final rule I want to touch upon in this subsection is all about the criticism of judges and adjudicating officials. So it says a lawyer shall not make a statement that they know to be false or with reckless disregard as to its truth or falsity concerning the qualifications or the integrity of a judge, an adjudicative officer, a public legal officer, or a candidate for election or appointment to judicial office. So what this rule is saying is that you are definitely allowed to freely express your opinions and experiences about a judge, so long as they're rooted in some sort of knowledge or personal experience. So if someone asks you how your experience went in front of a judge that maybe you had a case in front of or a trial in front of, you're allowed to explain your experience to them. This rule is not being violated if you do so, but you do violate this rule if you maybe dislike a judge because maybe they've ruled against you or you lost a case in front of them or you just dislike them for some reason. And you tell people that maybe they really haven't gone to law school. And you don't know. You just are merely saying that because you are angry with them, let's say. So that's problematic under this rule. That is criticizing them. It's making a statement with some sort of, reckless disregard for its truth. And that's problematic. And that type of statement could get you in trouble here for violating this rule. So that wraps up our discussion on this subsection about the lawyer's duties to the public and the legal system.